Let me ask you something. Do you know what a lie is? A lie?
Yeah.
What is it?
It's when you don't tell the truth and you do something bad.
And what happens when you tell a lie?
You get in trouble.
This little 5-year-old kid is at the center of a horrifying happening. His regular family evening turns into a total nightmare. A thief bursts into the Morrisseys' home, not just to steal, but to torture them, kill them, and burn them alive. This is the story of what happened to the Morrissey family. It's about how they fought to stay alive, how they wanted justice, and how they found out someone they trusted did this to them. It's a crazy story with lots of twists and turns. So how did that quiet evening turn into such a mess? And why would someone do something so evil, hurting people and burning their home? In this video, we'll look at everything that happened, from the moment the bad guys got into their house to the shocking confession that made everyone go, "What?" What secrets were hiding in the Morrisseys' home? What made someone want to cause so much pain and destruction? Let's find out. So, back in early 2010, Linda and Joseph were living the dream. They had a young son, Patrick, whom they had adopted as a baby from South Korea, and their lives revolved around his happiness. They would even jokingly compete over who got to do simple things like feed him or change his diaper. Aside from that, finances were also solid. Kay was a high-level executive at Jewish Family Services in Broward County, and Joe was a respected cancer researcher teaching at Nova Southeastern University. Thanks to their successful careers, they were able to afford a lovely $393,000 home and plantation, hobbies and lessons for Patrick, trips abroad, and regular donations to their church. They were even in the process of adopting another child from Korea, a little girl who needed surgery for her cleft palate. Life seemed perfect until a shocking event nearly 3 years later turned their happiness into heartache. Now, Joseph and Linda Morrissey were landlords to a man named Tundidor. They were experiencing some tenant troubles. You see, Tundidor, along with his fiancée Hilda, her children, her mother, and his son Sean, had moved into a townhouse owned by the Morrisseys. Problems started when Tundidor began making unsanctioned repairs and deducting the costs from his rent. All this leads to a dispute with Joseph and Linda. On April 2nd, 2010, Joseph sent a formal letter to Tundidor stating he was violating their lease agreement. Tundidor received this letter on April 5th, which infuriated him. Angry and upset, Tundidor thought he would teach a lesson to Joseph. He called his son, Tundidor Jr., to see if he knew anyone who could intimidate Joseph. Jr. agreed to help scare Joseph, but only if he could move in with his dad at the townhouse. That very evening, Tundidor picked up Jr. from Hollywood, and they drove off to plan their next steps at Tundidor's business. So, Tundidor convinced his son Jr. to help him with a disturbing plan. Tundidor was fuming because his landlord, Joseph Morrissey, was kicking him out, and he felt like the whole family was falling apart because of this. He was desperate and angry, and he wanted to make Joseph pay. So he pulled together a scary collection of tools: a gun, zip ties, a big knife, a screwdriver, and some walkie-talkies, and tossed them into a box. His plan? For Junior to sneak into the Morrisseys' home, tie them up, and loot the place for anything valuable. Tundidor made sure everything was untraceable. He instructed Junior to turn off his phone to prevent tracking, and he even used a business phone to prevent any personal calls from tracing back to them. To ensure they wouldn't lose their way to the Morrisseys, he had Hilda, his fiancée, look up directions. They left the workshop at 10:37 p.m., charged with a terrible purpose. When they got to the house, Junior, loaded with the gun and wearing double gloves for no fingerprints, quietly entered through an open window. It didn't take long for him to find Linda in one of the brightly lit rooms. Junior, keeping his face uncovered, confronted her and demanded to see Joseph, who was sleeping on the living room couch. Junior didn't waste any time. He woke Joseph up by shouting at him, and he quickly tied both Linda and Joseph's hands with zip ties. He then forced them into the master bedroom, where their son Patrick was asleep. He made the parents kneel by the bed, covered their heads with towels to block their sight, and kept Tundador informed about each step he completed over the walkie-talkies. After making sure Linda and Joseph were secure, Junior led Tundador into the house through the front door. Tundador's orders were clear: find valuables. Junior rummaged through the bedroom but turned down Linda's offer of her wedding ring and some jewelry, thinking they weren't worth much. Frustrated by the meager loot, a few dollars and some euros by Joseph's wallet, Junior reported back to his dad. Tundador then raised the stakes. He wanted more money, a lot more. He told Junior to take the Morrisseys to the ATM and withdraw $5,000. So under Junior's watchful eye, they drove to the bank. But all Linda could get was $500. When they returned, Junior retied the couple in the bedroom and reported the disappointing haul to Tundador. The greed didn't stop there. Tundador ordered Junior to gather the Morrisseys' laptops and load them into his car. However, Tundador made a terrifying decision. He couldn't leave Joseph alive. Despite Junior's initial reluctance, Tundador was determined. He tried to shoot Joseph, but when the gun jammed, he resorted to the knife. Tundador repeatedly stabbed Joseph, ignoring his pleas for mercy. The horror didn't end with Joseph. Tundador wanted no witnesses. He began spreading gasoline around the house, saying that Linda and Patrick had to go too. Junior, horrified, tried to protest, but Tundador was relentless. He lit the fire and they quickly left the scene, leaving behind chaos and devastation. It was a night of unimaginable cruelty, one that changed the Morrissey family forever. So what happened after that horrifying night at the Morrissey home? Linda, who was tied up during the attack, somehow managed to free one of her hands. While she couldn't help Joseph as he was being stabbed and pleaded for his life, she could see him struggling and twitching in pain. Suddenly, she noticed an orange glow from the kitchen and heard the fire alarms blaring, signaling danger. She then heard the sound of the two attackers leaving through the front door. With one hand free, Linda tried to move, but she ended up falling and injuring her arms. In desperation, she called out to her son, Patrick. Bravely, Patrick found a pair of scissors and managed to cut her free from the rest of her restraints. By then, the house was already filled with smoke. Linda instructed Patrick to crawl towards the front door to escape, while she went to look for Joseph. She found him in the family room, unresponsive and unreacting to her calls. In a panic, Linda ran outside, screaming for help, but there was no one there to help them. She rushed back inside to see Joseph and noticed the floor was slick with something. To her horror, she realized it was because Joseph was on fire. She somehow managed to drag him outside onto the patio, but he was already beyond help. Now, while she was dragging her husband outside the house, Patrick ran to a neighbor's house, and they called 911. Soon, an officer arrived on the scene, but found the house was thick with smoke, and Joseph's body bloodied and tied up on the patio. The smell of gasoline hung heavy in the air. He spotted a gas can in the living room and saw flames in the kitchen. The next morning, Detective Kendall rolled up to the crime scene, which was still full of chaos. After talking to Linda, one of the survivors, he quickly zeroed in on Junior as a suspect. Without wasting any time, he issued a warrant for Junior's arrest, and even sent an officer to secretly watch Tundador's house from an unmarked car, hoping to catch any suspicious moves. At the same time, Dr. Chelka, a seasoned medical examiner, was piecing together the brutal events that had unfolded. He discovered that Joseph had suffered from multiple stab wounds, blunt force trauma, and burns. It was clear from the burns on Joseph's scalp and the right side of his neck and shoulder that he might have still been alive when the fire started, but not for long, since there was no carbon monoxide found in his blood. Dr. Trelka also noticed that during the attack, Joseph and his attacker were definitely moving, as shown by the defensive wounds on Joseph's hands and fingers. The knife used, Dr. Trelka concluded, had to be sharp, solid, and at least 7 or 8 inches long, a description that matched a Bowie knife missing from Tundador's collection, which police later recovered. Meanwhile, Junior's side of the story began to unfold. He claimed that after they left the Morrisseys' house, he and Tundador drove back to Tundador's business. There, Tundador handed $60 to go buy drugs. When Junior returned about an hour later, he found that Tundador had burned the clothes he wore during the attack and changed into a new set. They didn't stay long after that. They headed to Tundador's townhouse. That's when Tundador handed Junior the cleaned and ground-down knife, instructing him to dispose of it. Junior followed the orders, tossing the knife into a nearby lake. Junior then spent the rest of his night in Tundador's garage using cocaine, not even bothering to change his clothes from earlier. The next day, when the police showed up at Tundador's house to talk, Junior hid in the attic. After the police left, Tundador warned Junior that they were looking for him. Junior stayed hidden in the attic, continuing to take drugs until early the next morning. Finally, Tundador woke him and told him to get out. Junior left for a gas station, but made a mistake and made some phone calls. This led to his tracking, and the police apprehended him within 45 minutes of his arrival at the gas station.
Yeah.
The person of interest in the case of the professor killed is still in police custody tonight.
Tundador's father had little to say outside his shop.
He's my son. I love him to death, and I'm going to support him to the end.
Now, when Junior was arrested, he found himself sitting across from Detective Kendall at the police station.
I don't have no connection with this murder. I don't know who did it. I want to clear my name because I did not commit this murder. You know, he's been a good father. Like, he tries to direct me the right way and I go the wrong way, you know? He's really a good man. He's a very hard worker. He's a stand-up guy. And he would never do nothing like this.
Honestly, I think you may be involved in it.
Okay.
That's why we gotta clear the air.
And I understand.
You know what I mean?
Well, then we definitely gotta clear that.
Yeah.
It was April 7th, and the air was tense. Junior tells a fake story, throwing out the names of supposed accomplices in the crimes, trying to deflect any murder charges from himself. But the story didn't quite hold up. A few weeks later, on April 29th, Junior met with the detective again. This time, he opened up more about what had really happened, though he still kept some details to himself. Junior had a change of heart during these meetings. He realized that Tundador, his own father, was pinning everything on him and his brother Sean. Feeling cornered and betrayed, Junior decided it was time to come clean and testify against his father.
And Sean said his father had been trying to scam Joe Morrissey out of money by breaking light switches at the rented townhouse and by faking a slip and fall injury so he could sue Joe.
But there was nothing wrong with that light.
Okay.
And
so this fall down the stairs was a bunch of
it was, yeah.
Plus you said that you know your brother, you know he's a lot of things, but you know he's not capable of murder.
He's not. He wouldn't.
You said that you had some knowledge of...
Basically, I'm going to tell you straight up. My dad did it. He said, you need to shut up. He said, I'll kill you if I have to.
I knew. Right when I saw that headline on that news, I knew it was them. So I asked my dad. I said, well, what happened? And his words were, a dead man can't evict me.
The stakes were high, but in exchange for his testimony, the state agreed to reduce his charges to second-degree murder, taking the death penalty off the table. Junior also agreed to plead guilty to other charges, sealing his decision to finally tell the truth.
I knew. Right when I saw that headline on that news, I knew it was them.
Meanwhile, the police were putting the pieces together. They raided Tundador's business and found items linking him to the crime. Zip ties like the ones used on the Morrisseys, a set of walkie-talkies, and even some euros tossed in a trash can. Outside, they documented a burned area in the parking lot and collected samples of the residue. Security footage from the early hours of April 6th showed the area being deliberately set on fire, capturing the act at 2:30 a.m. In the midst of these developments, a dramatic confrontation occurred between Tundador and his elder son, Sean. During this tense exchange, Tundador admitted to Sean that he had not initially planned to kill Joseph Morrissey that fateful night. The plan was supposed to be just a robbery, with Junior believing the payoff would be money for drugs. but things had escalated far beyond a simple theft. Tundador confessed that he sent Junior into the Morrisseys' house specifically to tie them up, setting the stage for robbery. Sean, trying to piece together the events of that night, asked about a pair of white sneakers he'd left in the car. Tundador chillingly replied that they were not white when I was done with them, implying that they were stained during the violent events at the Morrisseys' home. The situation grew even more heated as Tundador ranted about Joseph trying to evict him, saying he couldn't let his family be thrown out onto the streets. He boasted that nobody F's with Tundador and that nobody gets away with it, revealing a motive driven by revenge and desperation. Tundador also instructed Sean to fetch the rent checks from the mailbox, grimly noting that they no longer needed to pay the landlord since he was dead. Knowing that his father was behind all of that mess, Sean decided to work with the police by wearing a wire to record his conversations with Tundador. This move led to a recording that would later play a crucial role in the courtroom. On this tape, the jurors heard Tundador discuss the night of the crime. He mentioned how Junior had directed the Morrisseys to the bank to withdraw money and boasted that Linda couldn't point him or Junior out in a lineup. Tundador also revealed his strategy to deflect blame onto someone named Will rather than letting Junior shoulder the murder charges. His confidence echoed through his words as he declared that the murder weapon would never be found. He even told Hilda and Sean to avoid prying into details or questioning his actions. Now, all this didn't end with the tape. During the trial, the defense attorneys grilled Sean, focusing on his initial police statements where he'd lied to provide Junior with an alibi, only to later confess that Tundador had admitted to the murderous actions at the Morrisseys' home.
Defending Randy Tundador Sr., pointing the finger at his son, Junior.
He was bragging that he did it. I mean, that's what caught my ears.
What did he say?
He had said he stabbed that cracker, my crazy. He stabbed the guy a bunch of times, still talking like it was a joke.
But one man took the stand and threw well-known and well-respected criminal defense lawyer Jim Lewis under the bus, claiming Lewis, who at one point represented father and son, instructed his clients to destroy crucial evidence: the gun used to rob and intimidate Nova Southeastern University professor Joe Morrissey and his family.
The atmosphere in the courtroom was tense as each piece of evidence was scrutinized. In his defense, Tundador's lawyers pointed fingers at Junior and Sean, suggesting they were the actual culprits behind the murder. They hammered on the inconsistencies in Junior's statements to the police, as well as some questionable things Junior had said to other inmates while behind bars. They also brought up Tundador's health issues and physical limitations, painting a picture of a man incapable of committing such violent acts. However, the evidence stacked against Tundador was overwhelming. The trial progressed through its guilt phase, with both sides fiercely debating the facts and their interpretations. On May 9, 2012, after considering all the testimonies and evidence, the jury delivered a unanimous verdict, finding Tundador guilty on all counts.
You shouldn't do anything to hurt your kids. I think that a father's job is to protect his kids, not to hurt his kids.
After 5.5 hours of deliberation,
The defendant is guilty of first-degree murder.
the jury convicted Randy Sr. on all charges.
The sentencing phase was equally dramatic. On November 7, 2014, the courtroom was heavy with anticipation as the judge readied to deliver Tundador's fate. The sentence was death. In deciding this, the court pointed to several aggravating factors: Tundador's previous violent felony convictions, his involvement in armed kidnapping and arson, the financial motives behind the crime, the particularly brutal nature of the murder, and the calculated, cold, and premeditated manner in which the crimes were carried out. Each factor was weighed heavily, painting a grim picture of a man who orchestrated a night of terror for personal gain. Throughout the years, this story came to light, painting a picture of a family riven by betrayal and a court struggle to unravel a web of distortions and corruption. The gavel sounded, marking the end of a chapter in the case, but leaving lasting shadows on the individuals affected by the tragedy, bringing justice, guilt, and the human capacity for both compassion and brutality into sharp focus. As the final chapter of this harrowing case closes, the story of the Morrissey family tragedy leaves us with heavy hearts and a stark reminder of the devastating impact of greed and betrayal. The sentencing of Tundador has served justice, yet all those affected still bear the scars. This case unfolded not only in the courtroom, but also in the hearts and minds of a community shaken by the severity of the crimes committed. We're reminded of the strength and resilience shown by the survivors, who had to rebuild their lives from the ashes of that dreadful night. Their courage in the face of such adversity inspires us all and underscores the importance of supporting one another through unimaginable challenges. As we conclude this documentary, let us reflect on the lessons learned about the depths of human nature, the pursuit of justice, and the enduring spirit of those who persevere. The Morrissey family case will long be remembered, not just for the darkness it revealed, but also for the light of hope and renewal that eventually emerged. If you found this video interesting and want to stay updated on more stories like this, please consider subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us continue to bring these important stories to light. Don't forget to subscribe, and thank you so much for watching.